I should have known something was off when my mom invited me over for Sunday dinner with that sing-song voice she only used when she was trying to act like nothing was wrong. Just the family, she said. We're doing ribs, bring that red wine you like. That phrase, just the family, hit a little different lately. Like the words had sharp edges I couldn't see yet but could already feel cutting. My name's Andrew. I'm a 4th grade teacher in Colorado, which means I survive on lesson plans, strong coffee, and the occasional happy hour. I've got a girlfriend, Emily, brilliant, grounded dental hygienist with the patience of a saint, and a family who seems to think I owe them rent on my existence. Mom's always been the subtle one, laying guilt down like fresh snowlight at first, then heavy when it piles up. Dad's more old school. If you're not doing what he wants, you're disrespecting him. My siblings, Tara, my younger sister, inherited Mom's passive aggression like it was a family heirloom. And Matt, my older brother, plays Switzerland until someone challenges him, then suddenly he's a tank. A few weeks ago, Emily and I took a trip. Just a weekend in Boulder hiking cold craft beer silence that didn't come with expectations. I didn't post anything, didn't send out a family-wide memo. But my cousin did post a story of us smiling on a trail, and like vultures to a fresh carcass, my family swooped in with opinions. "You're being selfish," Tara said over the phone. "You've changed," Matt muttered through gritted teeth. "And Mom," she gave me the soft-voiced gut punch. "We've always been here for you, Andrew, but when you get time off, you run like we're strangers." I brushed it off. Figured they were just having a moment. They always cooled down. So when Mom called me a week later to say we were having a backyard BBQ, I thought maybe this was her peace offering, an attempt to hit reset. I even grabbed a decent bottle of Pinot on the way over, nothing fancy, but nice enough. The backyard was full when I got there, Dad at the grill, Matt and his wife with beers in hand, Tara scrolling on her phone. They didn't look surprised to see me, but no one said hello either. I sat down, smiled through awkward silence, tried small talk with Matt's wife while everyone else barely acknowledged I was breathing. When Mom finally asked about Emily, it was one sentence with no follow-up, like checking a box on a grocery list. Trying to lighten the mood, I said something dumb, something hopeful. "I can't wait for summer vacation. I really need a proper break." And just like that, the mask dropped. Dad barked out a laugh and said, "That's just for the family. Without you." Laughter rolled around the table. Matt even clapped. Tara didn't even look up from her phone when she added, "Yeah, you made your choice. Guess we made ours." I stared at them, wine glass still in hand. Nobody flinched, not even Mom. She just smiled like it was a sitcom punchline. I didn't argue, didn't ask what they meant. I just nodded, stood up, and left the bottle behind. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said goodbye. That night, lying next to Emily, I told her everything. She didn't say much, just reached for my hand under the blanket and held it. And in that quiet moment, I knew something had shifted, not just in them, but in me. 5 days later, my phone lit up with a fraud alert. My mom had tried to withdraw $5,000 from a joint account I'd stupidly never closed. The same one I once used to help with groceries or holiday gifts. I didn't call, didn't text. I just blocked the card and renamed the account memo, "Pay Without Me." And that was when the panic started. The fallout didn't take long. Within an hour of blocking the card, my phone turned into a war zone. Missed calls from Mom, WhatsApp messages piling up, a string from Tara. Matt sent a voice note I didn't bother opening. I didn't need to. I could already hear the tone, condescending, self-righteous, dipped in faux concern. Then came the texts. "Mom, there's been a misunderstanding. Call me. Dad. You need to grow up and stop playing victim. Tara, LMAO. Guess you finally snapped. Matt. Are you really going to let one joke tear this family apart?" That last one stuck with me. One joke. They thought humiliating me in front of the entire family was just a punchline. Something you laugh off with a beer in your hand and move past like it didn't land, like a sucker punch to the ribs. They didn't get it. They never did. I ignored it all. By the 3rd day, they escalated. Matt called from a blocked number. When I didn't answer, he left a voicemail saying Dad wanted to hold a family meeting to clear the air. Family meeting. Like we were a company dealing with an HR complaint. "We need to talk face to face," he said. "You're overreacting and it's affecting everyone." Overreacting. Right. Because nothing screams rational like planning a family vacation and intentionally excluding your son, then trying to rob him blind 5 days later. Emily found me standing by the sink that night, staring at my phone like it might give me answers if I looked long enough. She came up behind me, slid her arms around my waist and said, "Don't let them guilt you. You didn't do anything wrong." I nodded but didn't answer. Because deep down I still felt like I was being the problem. Not because I believed it, but because that's what they trained me to feel. Since forever, any boundary I set was labeled disrespect. Any decision I made for myself, selfish. I told myself I'd keep ignoring them. That was the plan. But then Sunday came. I had just gotten back from grocery shopping, my phone buzzing nonstop in the passenger seat, when I pulled into the lot of my apartment complex and saw them, my parents, standing on the sidewalk. Not texting, not calling, standing there in real life as if showing up uninvited was perfectly reasonable. I parked and took a breath. Emily wasn't with me, thank God. She would have gone nuclear. I got out slowly, keeping my distance. Andrew's mom said, stepping forward with a nervous smile, "We just wanted to talk." I didn't say anything, just raised an eyebrow and waited. "You've been distant," she continued. "We know the barbecue got tense, but that was never our intention. It was just a joke I cut in. Just something funny. Exclude me. Mock me in front of everyone and then try to empty my bank account." Dad bristled. "Watch your tone." "There it is," I muttered, right on cue. Mom tried to step between us. "Look, your sister needs help with tuition." "She's 28, I snapped. Maybe it's time she figured it out. The silence that followed was dense. My father's jaw clenched the same way it always did when someone challenged his authority. I looked at my mom, really looked at her. She wasn't sad. She wasn't sorry. She looked irritated, like I'd thrown off their whole plan by daring to protect my own money. "You're different now," she said, "since you started dating Emily." I almost laughed. "No, I'm just not letting you walk all over me anymore." I turned and walked toward the building, pulling out my key. "Next time you show up like this," I added without turning around, "I'm calling security." That night, I sat on the couch with Emily watching a documentary neither of us really paid attention to. I kept glancing at the door like it might fly open again. "They're not done," I finally said. "I can feel it." She reached for my hand. "Then we'll be ready." I nodded. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a family fight. This was something deeper, something breaking, something that had been cracked for years and was finally giving way. It was a Tuesday when it all came to a head. I had just wrapped up a long day of parent-teacher conferences. Tired, emotionally drained, I was looking forward to collapsing on the couch with Emily and our usual Tuesday takeout ritual, Thai food and bad TV. But when I opened my email, I felt the floor shift beneath me. Subject: your trip itinerary from Vacation Travel Services. Confused, I clicked it open. My name wasn't on the reservation, but I had seen that itinerary before: dates, destinations, hotel upgrades. It was the same exact plan I'd been working on with Emily for our summer trip, the one I had budgeted for months, the one I hadn't shared with anyone. But the booking now listed 4 passengers: Matthew Matt, Anderson Tara, Anderson, Richard Anderson, Laura Anderson. My parents, my siblings. No Emily, no me. I sat frozen, the screen glowing in the dim kitchen light. At first I thought maybe it was some mistake, but then I saw the payment method. My old travel account, one I'd left, linked to a shared bank line with Mom years ago, back when I helped her plan a family cruise. I never thought to close it. They had used my money, my itinerary, my plans. Emily walked in just as I stood, the chair scraping sharply against the floor. "What happened?" I couldn't find the words, just handed her my phone. Her brow furrowed, then her lips parted slowly. "They're going on our trip?" I nodded once. "With my money." Her silence was louder than any scream. I paced the living room in tight circles. My blood ran hot, every nerve crackling. They hadn't just crossed a line, they'd bulldozed over it and torched the ruins behind them. First they cut me out emotionally, then financially. Now this. "This was supposed to be for us," I said. My voice was low, deadly calm. "I worked 2 extra jobs last summer. I gave up weekends. I've been saving since January. And they just took it." Emily came over slowly. "You're going to do something right." I looked at her, jaw clenched. "Oh, I'm done playing defense." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I gathered every receipt, every screenshot, every record I could find. I called my bank and initiated a fraud claim. Called the travel company and explained the unauthorized use. Then I logged into the reservation portal and canceled everything. Flight canceled. Hotel canceled. Rental car, poof. Gone. I made sure the refund processed to my new account. Then I changed every password I'd ever shared with anyone in my family. By sunrise, they would know the trip was off. And I wanted them to. It took 4 hours before the first call came. Matt, of course. Then Tara, then Dad. All went unanswered. It was the group WhatsApp that really caught fire. "Tara, what the actual fuck? Andrew, Matt, you're seriously ruining this out of spite, Mom." This was supposed to be our chance to reconnect. Dad, you're being petty. Grow up. Then the kicker. Mom, this is why we didn't invite you. You've become impossible to deal with. That was it. That message snapped something inside me. I'd spent years trying to please them, giving up time, money, emotional bandwidth for a family that treated me like a utility. And now they had the nerve to call me impossible. I typed without hesitation. Me, you didn't invite me because I stopped letting you walk over me. You used me, and when I finally stood up for myself, you called it betrayal. I canceled the trip because it was mine. You weren't invited. Emily and I were supposed to go. You turned it into a family vacation without the actual family. So here's what's happening. I'm done. With all of you. Good luck funding your own vacations from now on. Then I left the group. For good. I braced for the next wave calls, visits, maybe even more attempts to access my accounts, but it didn't come that day. Instead, it came the next afternoon in the form of a certified letter. They were suing me. Suing me for damages related to emotional distress and financial loss caused by the vacation disruption. My own parents, my own blood. Because I didn't fund their stolen holiday. I sat at my desk, letter in hand, heart pounding like a drum. That was the moment. Not when they used my money, not when they mocked me at dinner, but when they made it clear I was just a resource to them, a means to an end. Nothing more. I wasn't their son, I was their ATM. I called Denise, my aunt. They're suing me, I said. She didn't even sound surprised. I hoped they wouldn't, but I'm not shocked. What do I do? I asked. You fight back, she said, and this time you make it count. That night, Emily and I sat side by side at the dining table, flipping through folders, printouts, and letters. Denise had kept records 2 decades of them. Everything from small loans never paid back to manipulative messages to others in the family. Together we assembled a response, with legal backing, with proof. But more than that, I made a personal choice. I wasn't going to carry this family on my back anymore. I wasn't going to keep fixing the messes they created while pretending it was for love. I was going to stand up, speak out, and walk away. Not because I hated them, but because I finally loved myself enough to say no. The lawsuit didn't go anywhere. A few weeks after filing, their attorney quietly dropped the case, likely after reviewing the documentation and realizing it was a PR nightmare waiting to happen. There wasn't a leg to stand on. I had the receipts, the bank statements, the digital trail. If anything, I could have sued them. Instead, I let the silence hang. But silence doesn't mean peace. A week after the case was dropped, my dad called. No voicemail this time, just a missed call at 2:08 a.m. The next day he texted, "You made your point. I hope you're proud of yourself." No apology, no recognition, just a bitter sentence soaked in resentment. I didn't respond. Then came the email, this time from my mom. "Andrew, whatever happened to being a family? You've changed so much since you started dating Emily. You used to care. We've done everything for you." It was like clockwork, the cycle. Push the guilt, rewrite the past, paint themselves as victims of my boundaries. What they couldn't control, they now cast as betrayal. And still I didn't respond. But that didn't stop them. One Saturday morning they showed up, uninvited, again. Emily and I were having coffee on our new apartment balcony. It was sunny, peaceful, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Then my phone lit up with a message from the building's front desk. "2 guests here to see you. Richard and Laura Anderson. Should we allow them up?" I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Emily saw my face and already knew. "No," I replied. "Tell them I'm not accepting visitors." But they didn't leave. An hour later, I heard the buzzer again, then a knock. I opened the door just enough to see them, my parents, standing in the hallway like they'd been dragged there by obligation, not remorse. My dad had that familiar edge in his jaw, his posture stiff, defensive. My mom held a folder and in her other hand a gift bag. I didn't open the door wider. "What are you doing here?" I asked through the gap. My mom was the first to speak. "We came to talk, to make this right." "You tried to sue me," I said flatly. "You stole my trip, my money. You showed up at my old place unannounced. You filed a false complaint with the school. And now you want to talk." She blinked, taken aback. My dad folded his arms. "We overreacted, okay? But you were being ridiculous." And he nodded toward the inside of the apartment, clearly referring to Emily. "Got in your head." I let out a dry laugh. "There it is. Blame her, again." "We were a family before all this," my mom said, voice trembling now. Before I started what Emily's voice rang clear from inside. She stepped into view, calm but unwavering. Before I helped him stand up for himself, The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. My father's jaw tightened. "This isn't your fight," he muttered. "But it is," Emily replied, "because I've watched you push him down for years, and when he finally chose himself, you made him the villain." They didn't respond, couldn't. I looked at them both, really looked. I didn't see parents anymore. I saw people who only valued me when I served a purpose, when I gave, when I said yes. "I'm done," I said. "I'm not your emotional bank account. I'm not your fixer. I'm not your scapegoat. And I'm not your son in the way you've always defined it." My mom's eyes glistened. "So you're just cutting us out? You did that when you laughed at me at dinner, when you planned that trip, when you took without asking." There was a beat of silence. My dad finally spoke. "You'll regret this." "No," I said, voice steady, "you will." And I closed the door. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, every nerve buzzing. Emily brought me tea, didn't say much, just sat next to me, her warmth grounding me. "I didn't think I'd feel so sad," I admitted, "even after everything." "That's normal," she said. "You're grieving the family you hoped they could be." I stared at the ceiling. I wanted to believe they'd come around, that something would finally click. She leaned against me. "But now you know the truth. And that's its own kind of freedom." I nodded slowly. She was right. Over the next few weeks, things got quiet. My parents stopped reaching out. Tara posted vague quotes about disloyal people on social media. Matt blocked me altogether. But in the quiet, I found clarity. I started planning our trip again, just me and Emily this time. We picked a new place, Portugal, rented a small oceanfront apartment. We created a spreadsheet for flights and savings, but this time no one else had the passwords. I went back to work and my students welcomed me like I'd never left. A second grader drew me a picture of a strong teacher with a shield after I told him I'd been sick. I kept it pinned on my bulletin board. Emily and I started having longer talks about the future, maybe moving to a quieter town, maybe a dog, maybe, someday, a kid. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living for the approval of people who didn't care. I was building something on my terms with someone who respected me. Sometimes late at night, I still think about them. Not with hate, not even with anger anymore, just with distance. Like an old house I used to live in, one that always leaked when it rained. That looked good on the outside, but was full of rot behind the walls. You don't stay just because you grew up there. You leave. You rebuild. And that's what I did. I left. And I'm never going back. It's been almost a year since that final knock on the door. 12 months since I closed the door, not just on my parents, but on a version of myself. I no longer wanted to carry the obedient son, the default fixer, the guilt sponge in our family dynamic. I didn't just turn the key in a lock that day. I turned the page on a chapter I should have closed long ago. Emily and I moved into our new place a few months later. It was nothing extravagant, a cozy 2-bedroom apartment nestled in a quiet part of town with a view of a little park out back. The kitchen was hers the moment she stepped into it. The sunroom, filled with mismatched cushions and bookshelves, became mine. We planted herbs in window boxes. She named the basil Charlie. Life slowed down, not in the boring way, in the stable way. No more surprise texts that left me dreading family dinners. No more calculating whether I could afford to say no. No more opening my door in fear that someone from my past might be standing on the other side waiting to twist the knife one more time. I started sleeping again deeply. That kind of sleep you forget exists when you're always bracing for the next crisis. At work, things blossomed. After the fall school board complaint fizzled out thanks to Emily Clara and my own decision to finally stand up for myself, the administration quietly offered me a promotion. I'm mentoring new teachers now. I even helped rewrite the curriculum for our social-emotional learning module, fitting considering the year I'd had. Emily and I took that Portugal trip in June. We didn't post a single photo. Not because we were hiding, because we didn't owe anyone a narrative. We wandered small towns with cobblestone streets, ate pastries until we couldn't move, and drank port wine while watching the sun slide into the Atlantic. One night on the beach with sand still stuck between our toes, she looked at me and said, "You feel lighter now." I just smiled and said, "I think I finally believe I deserve peace." She didn't say anything. She just took my hand. That silence said more than words ever could. Aunt. The biggest shift wasn't external. It wasn't the new address or the job title or even the bank account scrubbed clean of shared access. It was internal. I stopped seeing myself as the one who had to hold the family together. And I stopped believing that loving people means sacrificing yourself for them, especially when they show you again and again that they only call it love when it benefits them. The key lesson. Self-respect is not cruelty. Boundaries are not betrayal. You can forgive someone quietly, from afar, with your number changed. A few months ago, my cousin Ava messaged me on Instagram. She's one of the few relatives who never took sides during the drama, who quietly stepped away from the group chat after I posted everything. Her message was simple. Hey, just wanted you to know, they regret it, especially your mom. She won't say it out loud, but I've seen it. She keeps a photo of you on her fridge. I read the message once, then again, and I felt nothing. Not in a numb, broken way, in a peaceful, healed way. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, I just didn't need to go back. I didn't need an apology to validate my decision. The wound had closed, and it was time to stop checking if the scar still hurt. Last week, Emily and I sat down with a wedding planner. Not a big wedding, just close friends, a lakeside ceremony, and tacos instead of formal catering. We didn't talk about seating charts for estranged relatives. There was no, do we invite them anyway, hanging in the air. The guest list fits on one page. Everyone on it has earned their seat. We picked out our wedding bands the same day. Nothing flashy, just simple, strong, elegant rings that looked like they'd weather anything, just like us. The day we finalized the invitations, I went for a solo walk in the park behind our place. The trees were just starting to turn gold. I sat on a bench and thought about everything. The barbecue, the laugh, the bank account, the trespassing, the school board complaint, the final confrontation. And then Denise. The folder. The courage. The stillness that followed. I whispered a quiet thank you into the wind. To her, to Emily, to myself. Because I had done the hard thing. I'd broken the pattern. And in doing so, I built something better. Yet, if my parents ever want to reach out again, I don't know how I'll respond. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I know this, they won't break me again. Because I'm no longer building my life on someone else's expectations. I'm not waiting to be chosen, included, or forgiven. I've already chosen myself. And that is enough. Story 2. I've always been the steady one in my family. While my older brother Eric jumped from business venture to business venture, hoping to strike gold. I built my life carefully. I went to school, landed a stable job, worked hard, and climbed the ladder one rung at a time. When I got a position at a firm downtown, a major step up in both title and salary, the only drawback was the brutal commute. 4 hours a day in traffic had me drained before I even started work. After a few weeks of this, I knew something had to change. During our regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house, I brought it up. My mom, always the solution finder when it came to anything except fairness, perked up. Remember Nana June's old apartment? It's vacant now. It's just a 5-minute walk from your office. That caught my attention. I knew the place well. I spent weekends there as a kid reading books on the balcony while Nana watered her plants. It wasn't big, but it was cozy. When I asked about rent, Mom named a price well below market value. Family discount, she added with a smile. I accepted on the spot. A few days later, I moved in and walked into a wreck. The place hadn't just been lived in, it had been neglected. Peeling wallpaper stains on the ceiling, chipped tiles. It needed work. I called Mom to ask if I could do some renovations. She gave the go-ahead as long as I didn't paint it anything too bright. What started as a few upgrades turned into a full-blown project. After work each day, I changed into sweats and tackled the apartment. I spent weekends at hardware stores, painted every wall myself, and handpicked every piece of furniture. I transformed it. 6 months later, it felt like home. When my mom came to visit, she was impressed. Genuinely. She even hugged me. I'm not exaggerating when I say that was rare. A couple of weeks later, I got a promotion. I was thrilled. When I shared the news over dinner, Mom barely acknowledged it before launching into an update about Eric. His latest courier business was failing. Competition, she said. A bigger company moved in. My parents had taken out a loan to help him. I voiced concern. Maybe it was time he looked into other options. Dead silence, then Dad, his voice tight. You don't understand business, Paige. I shut up. I'd been here before. Over the next few months, the inevitable happened. Eric's company folded. He and his wife Jenna moved in with my parents. At the next family dinner, the tension was thick. Jenna complained about living with in-laws. Eric looked sulky. That's when he asked casually, "What about Nana June's apartment?" I said, "I'm living there." Mom smiled at me but turned to Eric and Jenna. "Paige has done a great job fixing it up. It's really nice now." I felt something shift then. The way Jenna looked at me, not as family, but as an obstacle. I brushed it off. Until Wednesday night. I came home from work, unlocked my door, and walked into my apartment to find Mom, Eric, and Jenna inside. No warning, no heads up, just there. Jenna was admiring the curtains. "What's going on?" I asked, heart pounding. Mom waved a hand. "Don't be so dramatic, I own this apartment, I can come by." Jenna smiled. "We're thinking of moving in. This place is perfect." I laughed, confused. "I live here." "Well," Mom said, her tone shifting, "with all the upgrades you've made, the place is worth much more, so we'll need to increase the rent. Triple, actually. If you can't afford it, you'll need to find somewhere else." Triple. It hit me then. They wanted me out. They saw what I had built and they wanted it. "You have 1 week," she said, and they walked out. I stood there alone, surrounded by everything I'd built, and realized none of it mattered to them. They didn't care. But I did. And that night, I made a plan. I should have trusted my instincts when I saw that look pass between Kyle and Vanessa during dinner. It was that quick, subtle glance people share when they're silently planning something. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe I didn't want to. The following Wednesday, I came home from work later than usual. Traffic had been rough, and all I wanted was to heat up some leftovers and watch something brainless on TV. As I stepped out of the elevator and walked toward my apartment, I could already hear voices inside. At first, I thought maybe I'd forgotten to lock the door. My heart jumped. But when I opened it, I was met with a sight that made my stomach drop. My mother, Kyle, and Vanessa were standing in the middle of my living room. My mother was looking around with a kind of proud ownership. Kyle was slouched against the wall, and Vanessa, God bless her nerve, was running her hands across my freshly hung curtains like she was inspecting property she just closed on. I stood frozen in the doorway. "Mom, what? What are you doing here?" She didn't even blink. "Oh, Sage. Don't be so dramatic. It's our apartment, remember? We don't need an invitation." My mouth went dry. Something felt off. The air was too casual, too familiar. And then Vanessa turned to Kyle with that smug smile and said, "This is perfect. We can move in next week." "Move in." My voice came out quieter than I intended. "I live here. This is my home. I renovated everything. You can't just—" Mom cut me off, her tone sharp. "You've done a lot of work, yes, and it looks very nice. But technically I still own it. If you want to stay, we'll have to raise your rent." I blinked. "Raise it?" She smiled like she was offering me a coupon. "To market rate. Actually above it. Triple to be exact. You've added a lot of value with all your improvements. It's only fair." Fair. That word echoed in my head like a bad joke. Fair. As if any of this had been fair from the beginning. I looked to Kyle. He didn't say a word. Didn't need to. His silence said it all. He was in on it. They all were. They wanted me out. I barely remember what happened after that. I think I muttered something about needing time to think. Maybe I just stood there long enough for them to leave. Either way, when the door closed behind them, I was no longer confused, I was angry. They really thought I'd just pack up and go quietly. That night I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I pulled out my laptop and started looking for a new place. By midnight, I'd found a studio apartment just a few blocks from my office. Smaller, yes, more expensive. Sure, but it would be mine. No strings, no guilt, no manipulation. The next morning, I called out sick for the first time in years. By lunch, I'd signed the lease. By mid-afternoon, I had a moving truck booked and ready. Back at the old place, I began tagging everything that belonged to me with sticky notes. The couch mine, kitchenware mine. The bookshelves I built, definitely mine. My mom had provided 4 walls and a roof. I had built the rest. When the movers arrived, I directed them like a general at war. My war. One I hadn't asked for, but I was sure as hell going to win. By evening, the apartment looked like it had the day I first stepped in. Bare, neglected, and empty, except for that old lumpy sofa my mother insisted on keeping. I left the keys in an envelope and slipped it under my parents' door. I slept in my new place that night, exhausted but free. The next morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. From my mom, Kyle, even Vanessa. I ignored the first 5. Finally, I picked up. "How could you do this to us?" My mother barked before I could even say hello. Do what I said, trying to sound calm even though my hands were shaking. "Take my own belongings. Move out of an apartment I was kicked out of. You left them with nothing. No furniture, not even a bed." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, you mean the things I bought with my own salary?" "Yeah, I didn't think you'd need those since you were so eager to replace me." She called me selfish, vindictive, ungrateful. But I wasn't listening anymore. Kyle and Vanessa followed up with messages of their own. They called me names, said I was ruining the family, accused me of being jealous of Kyle's entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't respond to a single one. I had already said everything that needed to be said with one simple act: leaving. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear much. My cousin Danny mentioned during a coffee catch-up that my parents were trying to furnish the apartment again on a tight budget. Kyle still wasn't working. Vanessa was apparently furious about having to sleep on an air mattress. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt peaceful. For once I had chosen myself. And that peace, it was worth every penny. Life settled like snow after a storm. In the weeks after I moved, the silence from my family wasn't complete, but it was different. The noise wasn't about me anymore. Kyle was trying to start another business. This time a pet delivery service. Something about gourmet dog food subscription boxes. I didn't bother asking for details. Danny, my cousin, kept me informed in bits. She knew better than to push. Mom did call once though, 1 month to the day after I dropped the apartment keys under her door. She didn't waste time. The rent payment didn't come through, she said, her tone sharp and businesslike. I remember pausing, coffee in hand, blinds open, morning light pouring into my new living room. It was quiet here. Calm. Mine. I'm not living there anymore, I said, even and steady. Remember? You raised the rent, gave me a week to leave, and let Kyle and Vanessa move in. That's not the point, she snapped. You know we're paying off the loan for Kyle's business. He can't cover the rent right now. We were counting on you to keep that going for a little while longer. That sentence hit like cold wind against bare skin. You were counting on me to keep paying for the apartment I was forced out of? I asked, disbelief wrapping tight around my ribs. So they can live there for free. We're family, Sage, she said. Family helps family. I closed my eyes and exhaled slow. That line again. It had been used so many times it barely meant anything now. Funny, I said. I've never seen that rule work in my direction. There was silence, a thick, heavy pause. Sage, she said, her voice turning colder. I'm very disappointed in you. I actually smiled. That makes 2 of us, Mom. I hung up and blocked her number. Then Kyle's, then Vanessa's. I went through every app, every account, and shut them out like wind sealing a tent flap in winter. I needed warmth, not more storms. And it worked. Peace came again. It was quieter this time, not because the world went silent, but because I stopped waiting for them to understand. They never would. Over time, I heard things from Danny. My parents asked around for money to fund Kyle's next venture. Most relatives declined. Even Uncle Ray, who once loaned Kyle money for a car in college, said no. I heard Vanessa started working part-time at a boutique downtown. Kyle still floated between ideas, calling them ventures, but they didn't stick. They never did. I no longer felt angry, just tired. Tired of being the reliable one who got nothing back. Tired of hearing family helps family like it was a leash. Tired of fixing things I didn't break. In my own place, I built different routines. I picked up cooking classes on the weekends. Not for anyone else, just because I liked the rhythm of slicing onions while soft jazz played in the background. I spent Sunday mornings walking to the bakery around the corner, getting the same coffee, sitting in the same window seat, watching the city move around me like water in a stream. I read more. I slept better. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I felt human again. And then one night I got an email from my mom. The subject line read, "We miss you." It wasn't long. Just a few paragraphs. She said she'd been thinking about how things ended. She said maybe she hadn't handled everything the right way. That things were difficult now, but they still loved me. That maybe we could talk sometime. I didn't respond right away. I reread it a few times. Let it sit. I wanted to believe it. Part of me, the old part, wanted to reply with something kind, something forgiving. But another part, the one I'd grown stronger in these months, reminded me it's okay to protect your peace. So I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I stepped out onto my small balcony, looked up at the sky, the same sky I used to see from Grandma's old place, but different somehow. Lighter, wider, freer. There's a fire that grows in your chest when you finally stop asking others to see your worth and decide to live like you already know it. That fire doesn't burn you. It warms you. That was the fire I was walking with now. I don't know if I'll speak to my family again. Maybe. But it won't be under their terms. And it won't be because they expect me to fix something. If they come back, they'll have to come with open hands, not demands. Until then, I've got better things to do. And every morning when the light spills across my floor and the kettle whistles from the kitchen, I remember that this is what home feels like, not a place someone gave me. A life I built myself. Story 3. I'm Ava, 34, and I thought I had a solid grasp on my life. I had a fulfilling career in marketing, a cozy home in Seattle, and a marriage that, while not perfect, seemed stable. My husband, Ryan, 36, was an entrepreneur with big dreams and a charisma that initially drew me in. We had our ups and downs, but I believed we were partners in every sense. A few weeks ago, I took a trip to visit my parents in Chicago. It was a routine visit, something I did every few months to catch up and recharge. Ryan stayed behind, citing work commitments. We kept in touch daily and everything seemed normal. Upon my return, Ryan greeted me with an unusual enthusiasm. He was practically beaming as he said, "I made a major business move while you were away." Intrigued, I asked for details. He leaned in, eyes gleaming, and said, "I sold your jewelry collection. Every piece. The funds are fueling my new startup." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but his expression remained serious. My heart sank. That collection wasn't just jewelry, it was a tapestry of memories. Pieces passed down from my grandmother, gifts from my parents, and items I had bought to commemorate personal milestones. Each piece held a story, a sentiment. I confronted him, my voice trembling with disbelief. "You had no right, Ryan. That was my personal property." He dismissed my concerns, saying, "You hardly wore them. They were just collecting dust." I was stunned. The betrayal cut deep, but amidst the shock, I remembered a precaution I had taken months earlier. Concerned about a series of local burglaries, I had discreetly embedded tracking devices into the clasps of my most valuable pieces. I rushed to check the tracking app on my phone. To my relief, several pieces were still traceable, their locations marked across the city. Determined to reclaim what was mine, I contacted my best friend Maya. She was furious on my behalf and insisted I report the theft to the police. The next morning, I filed a report presenting the tracking data as evidence. Detective Harris took my statement and assured me they would investigate. That evening, Maya came over with a bottle of wine. We sat in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a resolve to take control of the situation. This wasn't just about the jewelry, it was about respect, trust, and autonomy. The following day, Detective Harris called with an update. They had located several pieces at a local consignment store and were coordinating with the owners to retrieve them. He also mentioned that they were looking into Ryan's financial activities as there were signs of potential fraud. I was reeling. The man I had shared my life with had not only betrayed my trust, but might also be involved in illegal activities. I knew I had to protect myself. I contacted a lawyer to discuss my options and began the process of separating my finances from Ryan's. This was just the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was determined to reclaim my life and my sense of self. When I filed the police report, I thought recovering my jewelry would be the hardest part. But the deeper I went into this mess, the more I realized Ryan's betrayal wasn't just a moment of bad judgment, it was a pattern I had chosen to ignore for years. Detective Harris called a few days after our first meeting. His voice was calm, but I could hear the tension behind it. "Ms. Rivera," he said, "we've recovered 3 pieces from the consignment store and 1 from a pawn shop. They're being held as evidence for now, but we're confident we'll return them soon." That gave me some hope, but then he paused. "We're also uncovering something more troubling. Ryan's business accounts show suspicious transfers, offshore wires, cash, withdrawals, payments to shell companies. I don't want to jump ahead, but it may involve tax evasion or even money laundering." I felt the floor drop out beneath me. I'd married this man. I had trusted him with everything. I thought I knew him. When I got off the phone, I just stood there for a long time. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I called Maya. She came over within an hour. No questions asked, just a calm presence and a quiet strength that grounded me. "You didn't cause this," she said, pouring us both a glass of wine, "but you can decide how it ends." I told her I'd already contacted a lawyer and was considering legal separation. She nodded. "That's the right move. You need distance, not just emotionally but financially." The next week was a blur. I met with the lawyer, a sharp but compassionate woman named Vanessa. She laid it out plainly. "You're not liable for anything he did unless your name is on those accounts, and we'll work to separate your assets immediately." Meanwhile, Ryan was spiraling. When he found out I had filed a police report, he came home late, angry. He stood in the doorway, his posture tense. "You really had to do that," he snapped. "Go to the cops." "You left me no choice," I replied, calm but firm. "You stole from me. You sold things that didn't belong to you." He laughed bitterly. "Stole? I'm your husband. What's yours is mine." "No," I said. "What's mine is mine. And you crossed a line." He stormed out. Again. That had become his way lately, retreat when he couldn't win. 2 days later, I got another call from Detective Harris. "We found more of your jewelry, a bracelet and 2 rings, all accounted for. But there's more. Ryan was moving funds from personal accounts to the business without any paperwork. The IRS has been notified. They may open a case. I remember sitting on the couch after that call, the silence of my apartment pressing in on me. There were no words, no thoughts, just the steady thrum of realization. This life I built with Ryan was over. That weekend, I began boxing up old photos, gifts from anniversaries, even the few mementos I had once cherished. I wasn't running, I was clearing space emotionally and physically for the next chapter. The silence between us stretched longer each day. We hardly spoke. When we did, it was sharp and defensive. The love I once felt had twisted into something unrecognizable. It wasn't hate, not yet, but it wasn't trust either. And without trust, there's nothing to build on. Vanessa filed the separation papers. She also helped me freeze the joint account before Ryan could drain it just in case. The day the paperwork arrived, Ryan didn't even try to hide his disgust. "You're really doing this?" "I have to," I said. "You made choices, Ryan, and now I'm making mine." He tried to argue, to guilt me, to tell me I was being cold, but I didn't waver. For once, I didn't shrink myself to make him comfortable. Maya helped me draft a list of every item, every dollar, every password I needed to change. It was exhausting, but it was also empowering. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was rebuilding. One evening, Maya stayed late. We sat on the balcony, city lights flickering below the wind, carrying the scent of rain. She looked at me and said, "You're becoming yourself again." And for the first time in weeks, I believed her. The storm wasn't over, but I had found my footing in the wind. I had remembered who I was before Ryan's ambition became a shadow over my light, and I had started slowly but surely to walk away from that shadow. Not in fear, but in truth. I'd always thought the hardest part of a broken relationship would be the heartbreak. But I was wrong. It's not the ending that hurts the most, it's the silence afterward. The absence of noise, the weight of space, the empty drawers, the missing routine. Still in that quiet, I found something unexpected. Peace. A week after the separation papers were filed, Ryan was formally charged. I got the call from Detective Harris early in the morning. He didn't sound surprised. "He's facing multiple counts," he said. "Fraud, embezzlement, unauthorized sale of property. The list is long. The evidence is solid." "Will there be a trial?" I asked, my voice steady but my hands cold. "Likely," he replied. "But you've done your part, Ms. Rivera. You came forward early and you gave us everything we needed. You helped us stop this before it grew worse." I thanked him and hung up. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because the sadness had changed. It no longer wrapped around me like fog. Now it stood in the corner of the room, something I acknowledged but didn't let inside. That same afternoon, I returned to the precinct to collect the last of my jewelry. The sapphire necklace, the gold earrings from my mother, the emerald ring Ryan always pretended not to like. I held each piece in my hands, remembering what they meant. They weren't just metal and stone, they were stories, gifts, memories, parts of me that had nearly been erased in the name of someone else's ambition. But they had returned, and so had I. When I got home, I laid them gently in a new wooden box I'd bought for myself. Nothing fancy, just something clean, simple, mine. Ryan didn't try to contact me directly after the charges were announced, but his attorney reached out, something about negotiations, settlements, property. I handed it all over to Vanessa, my lawyer, and didn't respond. Whatever needed to be said could happen in court. Maya and I met for coffee not long after. So she said, sliding a mug across the table, "How does it feel?" "Strange," I admitted. "Like I just survived a storm I didn't know I'd been living in." She smiled. "You've always been stronger than you knew." I looked out the window. The world outside moved forward, people laughing, cars rushing by, life returning to its rhythm. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was being left behind. The divorce finalized 3 months later. Clean cut. Vanessa made sure of that. No shared assets, no lingering financial ties. Ryan's accounts were frozen. His court dates were scheduled. And me, I started a new journal. I moved into a smaller apartment on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, just enough sunlight, a quiet balcony, and a kitchen big enough to cook for friends. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Just small canvases, sky-earth memory. One evening, I took a walk to the park nearby. The air smelled like rain and pine. Children were laughing in the distance. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes. I remembered how Ryan once told me, "You're too careful. That's why you'll never build something big." But I had built something. A life. A self. A calm fire inside that didn't burn hot and fast, but steady and true. The kind that stayed lit even in the wind. Sometimes I still think of him. Not with anger, not even with sorrow, just with distance. Like a dream I finally woke from. One I survived. I saw Maya last weekend. We cooked together in my tiny kitchen, dancing between pots and playlists. At one point, she looked around and said, "It's small, but it feels like home." "It is," I replied. "For the first time, it really is." And in that moment, I understood something. Life doesn't need to be dramatic or perfect to feel whole. Sometimes all it needs is honesty, breath, and enough space to remember your own name. My name is Elena Rivera. I was lied to, stolen from, betrayed. But I am not broken. I am whole. And I am home.